हेलो एवरीवन, जय हिंद एंड गुड आफ्टरनून। वेलकम टू द प्लेटफॉर्म ऑफ श्रीराम्स IAS। आप सभी का स्वागत है श्रीराम्स IAS के प्लेटफॉर्म पर। एंड द टॉपिक ऑफ डिस्कशन टुडे will be COP30. Again, a very important topic for your upcoming UPSC examination. Alright, now when we talk about COP30, it is very important to note over here that we are discussing COP30 in another limelight, and that is that it can, it can lead to evolution of a new climate order or new the new power dynamics can evolve when we are talking about the COP30. We'll discuss in deep what is COP30, all right, when it will be taking place, all right. But before moving ahead, let me tell you, there had been two important news related to COP30 or UNFCCC, all right, and that is that the USA or United States of America has they have decided that they won't be sending any high-level officials to COP30. And when we are talking about USA, we all know that what happened during the Kyoto Protocol as well, that the USA had taken itself outside from the Kyoto Protocol as well. All right. At the same time, when I'm talking about right now, I just read a news, and that is about European Union. Now, there had been talks, there had been discussions about planning how they will be, what their determined targets or contributions would be as far as COP30 is into the place, or it is about to take place. All right. Now, when we are talking about European Union is discussing what their targets will be, what their specific targets will be, and there are certain indifferences when it comes to the nations which are part of the European Union, and they are discussing what would be the targets, what targets they will be projecting when they, the leaders of the European Union, they go into or they take part into the COP30. All right, now, when it comes to the COP30 and today's topic of discussion, now why it is important for you as well as for the for India, all right, that is very specific for India's perspective, why this topic holds very much importance. Now, when we are talking about India, we are talking about foreign policy priority, where right now, if you can see, the geopolitics have been shaped by the climate policies. All right, we are talking about climate diplomacy, which is shaping the various global alliances, and not just global alliances, even the partnerships with the different corporate sectors have been recently been shaped by the climate policies or the climate diplomacies. All right. Along with this, when it comes to India, now we have also the national determined targets or the contributions which had been laid down. We are moving towards the renewable transition, where we are focusing more on cleaner energy fuels, as well as the climate financing negotiations which are about to take place in COP30, that are very important, and it is very much central to our national strategy. Now, why this is very important for your UPSC examination? So when it comes to your GS paper 2 and 3, over there, we have topics like international relations as well as governance, environment, and even the sustainable development. And there you can find the questions related to COP30. All right. So this is all about why this news is very much important. Now, when it comes to the COP, now what do we mean by COP? COP is basically a conference of parties. All right. It means conference of parties, and actually this is an annual meeting where the leaders from different parties or the leaders from the different, the nations which are part of or they are signatory of any document, they come together and then they take part in the annual discussions which are there. Now, when it comes to the COP is actually, along with UNFCCC, it is also aligned with other the different frameworks which had been laid down. Like, for example, when we are talking about United Nations Convention for Combating Desertification, there is again COP that is there. All right, that is also a conference of parties. But today we are discussing about the conference of parties which are to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. All right, that comes under the UNFCCC coverage or the framework. Now, the membership, when it comes to the membership, there are total 197 countries which are part of the UNFCCC, the COP, and along with 197 countries, EU or European Union is also the part of it. So there are total, when it comes to the total parties, there are total 198 parties which are there. Alright, the purpose for this conference of parties is, it is again, I told you, it is annual summit where we assess the progress. Alright, there are national determined contributions which had been laid down by various countries as per 2015 Paris Agreement. Alright, so over here, there is assessment of the progress and also the further climate negotiation. What should be the action for combating the climate change and to keep down the rising temperature below 1.5 degrees Celsius. So that is the main agenda that is there annually for which this conference of parties they meet. All right. The authority is, when we talk about the COP is basically the supreme decision body or decision-making body for all the global climate governance, and that is what a conference of party means when it comes to UNFCCC. All right. Now, there had been different important conference of parties which had been laid down over here. All right, the first important party, the conference of party was in 1995. It was the first COP that was held in Berlin, Germany. Now, this is important for your prelims. All right, in prelims you can find the question that would be in the form of match the following, where the different conference of parties were held. Alright, so now when we are talking about over here, in 1995, that the first conference was held in Berlin, COP1 in Germany, where the parties or the nations, they met to deal with the climate mandates, and over here the negotiations, they began on the quantitative objectives as well as the deadlines to reduce the greenhouse emissions which are there. The next conference of party was again very important, that is COP3. And that was in 1997. This was held in Kyoto in Japan. This was where the Kyoto Protocol, the first binding treaty that required the industrialized nations to cut down their greenhouse gas emissions, had been signed, and this treaty is basically had been ineffective because China and USA, they did not follow the policy guidelines. All right. Now comes the next important one, that is the Paris Agreement that was signed in Paris in COP21. It was in 2015, and that is why when it comes to 2025, the COP30, it holds very much importance because the COP30 is basically being held after a complete decade, that is after 10 years of the Paris Agreement. Alright, the Paris Agreement was signed, which is right now the most comprehensive agreement related to the climate change or combating the climate change. And when it comes to the goal is to limit the global warming below 2 degrees Celsius. However, when we are talking about over here, alright, so the limit or the effort should be there so that this increase in temperature should be well below 1.5 degrees Celsius. That is the that is the goal of the Paris Agreement right now. All right. Then the last three of the COPs were held. The COP27 was held in Sharm el Sheikh in Egypt. All right. Then there was Dubai Conference of Parties in 2023, COP28, and the last was in COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan. However, when it comes to the last COP, Conference of Parties in Baku, Azerbaijan, alright, what happened was, or it is believed that this treaty, when you talk about the COP, sorry, not treaty, the Conference of Party 29 in Baku, Azerbaijan is actually felt that it had been indecisive and also it was a failure. So that is why it is very important to note over here that COP30 is very, very important, because this is just after a decade of the Paris Agreement that this Conference of Parties is taking place. Now, how the COP meetings are held? So initially there would be opening plenaries, and in the opening plenaries there would be highest level statements that will be from the head of states as well as the ministers, that they will be representing their states. So they will make out or they will give out the high level statements. All right. Then there would be negotiations that will happen. There would be parallel discussions upon how we can mitigate the climate change, how we can adapt to the climate change, and even the climate finance. All these discussions will take place after the opening plenaries. All right, then there would be side events and pavilions where civil societies, the business persons or the business forums, the technical workshops, even the indigenous voices would be heard, and they would take place, or they would take part in the discussion that would be there related to the climate change. And finally, there would be final negotiations where the text drafting will take place about what this COP had or it will achieve in the next 1 year. All right, there would be consensus building among all the various parties which are there, and then there would be adoptions of the decisions, and that is how the meeting takes place. So therefore, this conference of party is not a single day event. All right, it takes place for about 10 to 12 days. All right, and that is why this time this conference of party will be about 11 days in tenure. All right, this will begin from November 10, 2025 to 21 November 2025. There would be 2-week intensive negotiations that will take place over here. Along with this, when we are talking about COP30, what would be the venue? The venue is where we have the Amazon forest. It is located, or it will be held at Belém in Brazil. All right, that is where we have the Amazon forest. It is just into the gateway to the Amazon. Belém is located over there. And why it is historically significant? The COP30 is historically significant because this is the first time that COP would be in, or it would be held in, the Amazon region. Now, when it comes to the Brazil, all right, so there are certain dilemmas, as well as there are Brazil's leverage when it comes to the climate change or the climate policies. All right, let me tell you frankly that Brazil is right now the 5th largest emitter of the fossil fuels. All right, and when it comes to the dilemma, all right, we are talking about the dilemma. There is right now high deforestation that is taking place in the Amazon. All right, so there is a deforestation pressure in the Amazon, as well as there are conservation pledges. So on one hand, the Brazil is saying that it will conserve the or it will work for the conservation of the globe, and also work for the betterment of the climate change or the climate policies. But at the same time, there is a very rapid, intensified deforestation that is taking place in Amazon. As well as when it comes to the economy, the Brazil's economy is basically reliant on the fossil fuel export, so that conflicts with the climate goals. And as well as when we are talking about development and the indigenous land rights, there had been issues related to their the development and the land rights had been in the loggerheads, and there had been issues related to the balancing development along with the Land Rights Act, all right, or the indigenous land rights. Now, what is the leverage that Brazil has? So when it comes to the climate, or when it comes to the environment, so Brazil is home to the world's largest tropical rainforest, that is in Amazon region. The selvas forests are located over here. All right, along with this, there is when it comes to Brazil, it has a very great leadership role. All right, we have seen in different forums, like we have BRICS. All right, when we are talking about South to South leadership, Brazil had taken a leadership role. And when it comes to Global South Climate Coalition platforms, so there also we can see that Brazil is the front runner into the leadership roles. All right, along with this, when it comes to Brazil, all right, so over here, Brazil also has a kind of platform where it can show the world how the reforestation and the restoration of the forest could be a success. So that is why Brazil has a leverage over here as well. Now, when it comes to the challenges, what is challenges or the global what are the things which are changing, or what changes we could be expecting over here? All right, so the first and the foremost thing is the multipolar climate diplomacy, because over here I told you that US has, or the United States has already said that it is not sending any high level delegation or high level officials to the COP30. At the same time, there is a news that US can take itself out from the Paris Agreement. It can retreat its steps, and it will be backing off from the Paris Agreement. And this would be effective, if effective, this would be effective from 1st of January 2026. So over here, we can see that there is multipolar climate diplomacy that we can see in COP30, where the power may shift from US-EU axis towards the BRICS as well as the other nations, the developing nations. Towards them, we can see the power dynamics when it comes to climate diplomacy that may change. Alright, US has already retreated from the leadership, and this has weakened the commitment, and again it creates that vacuum because US is a global power that creates a vacuum in the global climate governance as well as when it comes to the finance gap. Alright, we had pledged $100 billion of the fund, but right now we are shorted. Alright, that had been unmet, that pledge had been unmet. Now there is a demand. Alright, the developing nations, they demand accountability as well as they demand the financing needs for combating the climate change, especially those nations which are, very least developed. At the same time, when it comes to the private sector that is emerging, where we have corporations, cities and investors which are increasingly driving the climate change. We can see different segments or different industries which are now molding their equipments, they are molding their different the products into the adopting the climate change policies. Like for example, we can see it in the sector of the industry, in the sector of automobiles. So in the automobiles, we can see that we have the corporations which are now driving or they are making the products which are EVs. They are based on electric vehicles, and that is the change that we are seeing. And this is not just one sector, we are seeing the same changes in different sectors right now. All right. So along with this, when it comes to the US decision, all right, the USA had decided to skip the top level at the COP30. All right, the announcement came from the White House and it confirms that there would be no high level officials that would be taking part in the COP30 discussion, and they have stated the rationale behind this had been stated that there are demands for the domestic purposes. All right, domestic priorities are there, and ultimately the US will not be, or United States of America, it will not be taking part in the COP30. Along with this, political transition and focus, they would be focusing on the bilateral relations that they have said, and because of this, they have decided not to take part in the COP30. Now, this has created an alarm among the climate advocates. Opportunity for the new leadership have now emerged, and that is why this is very important for India to watch out. All right, now when we are talking about the USA move, it matters because over here there is multilateralism that had been under threat. All right, this weakens the consensus building process that is there and also undermines the collective action frameworks, and therefore when it comes to the multilateral or multilateralism that had come under the threat, all right, then it comes to the burden sharing shift. Now over here there are finance gaps. I told you that there had been a fund, a kind of fund that had to be mobilized, $100 billion fund. All right, now it has been unmet. Now over here the pressure will be upon the developing nation to meet those financing needs. All right, they would be under pressure. But at the same time, when it comes to, when we talk about the Kyoto Protocol had laid down specifically that when it comes to the climate change policies or the adaptations, all right, the developed nations have to take the lead because they have reaped the benefits and they have soiled the global atmosphere because of their use of fossil fuel, much more use of the fossil fuel. And that is why over here the burden will shift upon the the developing nations, all right, and the developing nations will have to fill that financing needs. All right, at the same time when we are talking about the negotiation, there would be a realignment because now we do not have USA top level officials who would be attending the COP. So over here there would be a realignment of the power change. There would be a shifting of the power change that will be more focused upon European Union, China as well as India, who will be taking the lead over here. Now, when it comes to the COP30, all right, there are certain things which are at the stake of India. All right, for example, when it comes to the national determined contribution, there is a contribution, or we are planning to increase our renewable capacity to 500 gigawatt by 2030. Along with this, we would be looking for the fair share into the $100 billion fund that would be mobilized, and we will be looking for a fair share for India as well. All right, when it comes to the balance, we have to look for the balance between the coal dependencies as well as the green growth as well, because we cannot, as a developing country, we cannot just shift to the green energy in a moment. So of course we have to see that we are balancing both of these things. All right, the need for dependence on the fossil fuels as well as the green growth, as well as when it comes to the forest conservation. So we could show the reconservation, reforestation efforts that had been taken place in India as well as when it comes to the resources for vulnerable communities, we can also showcase our global leadership in these areas, in these two different areas. All right. Now, when it comes to the COP30, what would be the key issues over here? The first issue would be Tropical Forest Forever Fund. All right, over here, the Brazil. All right, Brazil would be, or this had been a proposal that had been laid down by Brazil, where it proposes that there would be a permanent forest fund or finance that would be available for restoration works in the tropical forest as well as the reforestation and afforestation programs. At the same time, there is adaptation indicators. There had been negotiations on rationalization and flexibility under the UAE-led program. Then there would be a new climate finance goal where we would be looking forward for a successor to 100 billion promise that had been made earlier. And as the various climate, the climate negotiators, they say that $100 billion is actually a kind of very small fund as compared to the need. And they project that the need is for 1 trillion fund that should be there. All right. So over here, India will be seeking a transparent as well as a predictable mechanism where the fund will be shared equitably. All right. There would be issues related to the technology implementation program where there would be a push for the capacity and institutional mechanism for low carbon tech and global ethical stock take, where Brazil's proposal is to link the ethics, science and sustainable lifestyle, which is aligned with India's mission life. All right, along with this, when it comes to the COP30 over here, these are the key agendas. There would be a loss and damage finance that would be discussed over here. Along with this, fossil fuel transition, where there would be phased down targets that would be laid down for phasing down the fossil fuels and moving towards the clean and green energies. And that is why EU or the European Union is discussing its target right now, because there had been differences. The various nations, they have laid down their concerns, and right now they are discussing about the targets that they will be sending in the COP30. Because of course, when it comes to the when it comes to the aggregation of the complete European Union, they are one of the most largest or one of the largest contributors to the fossil fuel emissions or fossil gas emissions. All right. Then there would be discussions about forest and land use, where Amazon protection, the tropical forest protection would be there, and even the indigenous rights, RED plus implementation would be discussed. Along with this, when it comes to the adaptation architecture, there would be discussions upon the adaptation, the global goal on adaptation, and to enhance the resilience funding that would be discussed over here. And along with this, the formal inclusion in decision making of the indigenous voices as well as recognition of the traditional knowledge, where we have seen that when it comes to the Amazon forest, there had been indigenous tribes which are living in the Amazon forest, and they had been responsible for protection of the Amazon forest. So all along the different issues that would be there, these are the major agendas or the items that would be there in the COP30 agreement or COP30 that will take place in Brazil. All right. Now, when it comes to the business and non-state actors who will also be participant in the COP30, All right, there would be pledges from the private sector where major corporation commitments would be there, leading to net zero targets, supply chain decarbonization, and even the climate disclosure standards will have to be seen. All right, because of course this would be seen after the finalization of the COP30, instrument or the agreement that would be there. All right, the cities and regions, they are implementing ambitious climate action plans, often exceeding the national targets that would be discussed and that could taken into the consideration during the COP30 as well. All right, at the same time, when we are talking about the companies which are driving solar, wind and battery storage, all right, so they are innovating at unprecedented scale and speed, and therefore there would be a renewal push when it comes to the non-state actors which will be taking parts in the COP30, and also the banks and investors redirecting capital flows, divesting from fossil fuels, financing green transition. They would be also a major watch for the financial inclusion or the institutions. That would be a major watch during the COP30 that would take place in Brazil. Now, when it comes to the challenges, that we have to see in COP30, the first is the major challenge of declining leader attendance. Not just USA, there is news that most of the head of the states, they may skip COP30. All right. And there is also a kind of, when it comes to the number of attendees in the COP30. So I have seen that the amount or the people that has, just a second. All right. When it comes to the people that are there, so what are the attendees? The number of the attendees that has decreased. All right, that has decreased. It has decreased right from Dubai, then to Sharm el-Sheikh, and also when it comes to the right now the delegates and the attendees which are reaching Prelims. So the amount of the participants that have reduced very, very drastically. All right, so there are problems or the challenges about the declining leadership attendance in COP30, along with this logistical complexities, because when it comes to the infrastructure in Prelims, so there would be strain, the remote location accessibility and even the accommodation shortage will be there for the larger delegations. All right, when it comes to the economic instability, all right, right now, when we are talking about economic instability, geopolitical conflicts which are happening all around the globe, whether it is between Russia and Ukraine, or we can see various geopolitical tension in Africa as well, and we have domestic political transitions which are diverting attention from the climate. So all these cumulatively will be the global distractions, and again we have to see how these will be dealt with in the COP30. All right, and there is a trust deficit where I told you that there had been unmet finance conditions. The $100 billion fund had not been met completely. So of course there are trust deficits that are there and broken commitments that erode their developing nations' trust and faith in the COP30 right now. All right, now when it comes to the Amazon, why the Amazon forests they matter, or why this place where the COP30 is taking place, it matters. Because when it comes to the Amazon forest, they are the source of carbon sink. All right, they store 150 to 200 billion tons of carbon, and they absorb carbon dioxide equivalent global emissions. All right, at the same time, when it comes to the Amazon forest, they are home to various endemic species, and 10% of the world's species are located in Amazon forest, rainforest, and therefore they have a significant genetic as well as medicinal values as well when it comes to the Amazon rainforest. All right. However, I told you about the deforestation. It is right now going through a deforestation crisis where 20% had already been lost, and it is approaching the tipping point system where the complete ecosystem may collapse in Amazon rainforest. All right, there are 400 tribes in the Amazon rainforest, those which have protected 30% of the forest, and they have the best conservation track record as well. So when it comes to the indigenous stewardship, that could be showcased and that have to be that have to be showcased over here, how the leadership, how the efforts of the indigenous people and the communities that have a long-lasting impact on the climate as well as the environment. All right, and when it comes to the Amazon, it regulates the regional rainfall, it impacts the agriculture thousands of kilometers away. So of course the Amazon rainforest have a climate feedback as well. So that is why Amazon rainforests are very important, where this meeting is right now taking place. Now, India and Brazil have linkages in climate geography as well. When it comes to India and Brazil in climate geography, there are shared challenges where both the countries have tropical rainforest system. All right, they are under development challenges or pressure. Like for example, when it comes to the Western Ghats, you must have read about Western Ghats. All right, so when it comes to the Western Ghats are facing challenges in terms of deforestation. All right, in terms of the development. So there is a debate about development and the forest degradation. So both the countries share the same kind of challenges. All right, when it comes to the conservation. So the conservation, and then we have poverty alleviation. So both the countries have to balance between poverty alleviation and the forest conservation. That is again a shared challenge that both the countries they hold, as well as when it comes to the indigenous and tribal forest rights. So we have Forest Rights Act that had been implemented, but at the same time the tribal rights which are there in the forest, all right, along with the indigenous rights, both are the shared challenges that are there between India and Brazil. At the same time, when it comes to agriculture expansion and the carbon sequestration, all right, for the agriculture expansion, we have to clear the forest. All right, for the food security, we need more land where we can, we can grow crops. So at the same time, when we are talking about agriculture expansion, we are actually looking for more land. We are clearing out forest for the agriculture expansion. But at the same time, when it comes to the carbon sequestration, the forest, especially the tropical rainforest, they hold very much importance when it comes to the carbon sequestration. And therefore, there is a debate and there is a balance that have to be sought when it comes to both of them, the carbon sequestration as well as the agricultural expansion as well. All right. At the same time, when we are talking about the parallels between India and Brazil, so in Brazil we have Amazon, we have the Amazon basin, and in India we have Ganga river basin. So both of them are life-sustaining river system, and they are the part of, or they are one of the best fertile regions of the world when it comes to Amazon Amazon river basin and the Ganga river basin. All right, both the countries have the biodiversity mega centers as well. All right, so there is global conservation responsibility on both the countries. When it comes to the trade dynamics, biofuels, sustainable commodities, they are basically the trade dynamics between both the countries. And also when it comes to the South-South climate solidarity, so Brazil and India, they are both part of the BRICS. And ultimately, these are the similarities or the parallels that you can see between India and Brazil. All right, now when it comes to the implication for India's domestic policy, what would be the implications when it comes to COP30? The first is that there would be a renewable acceleration where we have a set target of 500 gigawatt that would be produced, and for that we have to scale solar capacity, the solar power generation capacity, we have to scale up the wind power generation capacity, and also to modernize the grid so that we can utilize this renewable sources of energies that are there. Along with this, we have to phase down, we have to have a roadmap where we have to look out for phasing down the coal and the fossil fuel. All right, we have to transition, and we have to also see that the mining communities, they are actually properly, they are transitioned properly. All right, because there would be lots of mining communities, the mining people, the people who are there involved with the mining sector. So they have to be, they have to be rehabilitated. They have to be given proper rehabilitation. So that all have to be taken into consideration when we are talking about transitional approach from the fossil fuels to the green energy. All right, the next important thing is the forest cover expansion. We are right now, or we have a target to achieve 33% forest cover. All right, so that is very important, because if the forest cover will increase, we will have afforestation and also reforestation drive that will lead India to achieve carbon credits. All right, then comes the adaptation finance as well. We have to secure the international funding for the climate resilience, especially from the $100 billion fund that is there, and we have to see that the finance that is going on or that is given to the countries is actually in a from a transparent mechanism. All right, and then we are talking about different industries as well. All right, Make in India projects. All right, we are talking about Make in India scheme. So over here, we can look out for being a manufacturing hub for the EVs as well as for solar panels and even for green hydrogen as well. So these are the policy imperatives or the implications that we can see for India after the COP30 or even in the future as well. Now, when it comes to the key challenges for you all, alright, these are the key challenges for you all where we have to look forward to the COP30 right now. You have to understand India's negotiating principles or the position that India have right now, the equity arguments, coalition building with G77 plus India, and you have to look forward for the climate diplomacy framework. Alright, then you have to analyze the multilateral institution effectiveness as well. We have different multilateral institutions which are there. So the role of UNFCCC versus bilateral or plurilateral mechanisms that you have to see. Alright, then India's strategic interest where we have to balance the development imperatives along with the climate action as well as the energy security, technology transfer demands that have to be seen. Alright, along with this, you have to connect environment, that is GS3, a part of your GS3 paper with international relations, which is part of GS2, along with ethics, that is part of GS4, and geography dimensions, that all you have to club together. Because as a UPSC aspirant and as a future administrator, you have to have a broad horizon. You have to look in, or you have to, you have to have interconnections, and that is very, very important and very good trait of a very good administrator as well. Alright, now when it comes to the ethics and governance angles, alright, so we are talking about intergenerational justice, alright, where it is our moral duty to preserve the livable planet for the future generation, or we can say that sustainability, alright, or sustainable development is the need of the hour. Alright, along with this, we are talking about historical responsibility, where developed nation, they must pay for the climate debt. Alright, so global equity should be there, not equality, but equity should be there when it comes to the climate change policies. Alright, $100 billion fund, the pledge that was there was a minimum, but actual need exceeds 1 trillion annually. So that have to be looked after, how we can finance this in a complete fairness, and the amount from the, the fund that could be given to the nations transparently. Alright, even when we come to the indigenous rights, the rights or the people who are living in these regions where we have forests, alright, we have the indigenous tribes which are living over here, they have to be taken into consideration, and their free prior informed consent should be taken before there are projects which are instituted in the tribal regions. As well as when it comes to the developing country, they have to have a meaningful participation and meaningful voice when it comes to the decision making related to the climate change policies and the climate change arguments or the discussions that are there. Alright, now what will be the way forward and what India should watch during COP30? Alright, the first and the foremost is the outcome implementation. Just after the COP30, after the COP30 is over, India should watch and monitor the pledges that it makes actually, and also what it actually delivers. Alright, or what are the action deliveries about the pledges that we have made in the COP30. Along with this, the NDC or the National Determined Contribution Tracking should be there, and over here we have to assess if the global commitments of all the nations, they will align together so that we can delimit the increase of the temperature with 1.5 degrees Celsius limit that we have set along with the Paris Agreement. Along with this, when it comes to the international agreements, All right, the international agreement, they have to be turned or they have to be converted into national policies. So there have to be a domestic translation. All right, when it comes to finance mechanism, active participation in loss and damage fund governance will give a boost and it will give a transparency for India as well as for the global nations. All right, and as well as there would be a push for access to clean technology along with the favorable terms, and these are all the things, different things that India should watch, all right, or India's way forward when it comes to COP30. All right, so when it comes to COP30, it is a strategic moment where it will reshape the global climate architecture because the US has retreated and also there would be multipolar power shifts during COP30. So it is a very important to watch over here that how this power shift will evolve. All right, India must engage, and this is actually an opportunity that has been provided to India to lead on a global scale. All right, so over here, India should lead when it comes to COP30. All right, it has very great importance for your GS papers, whether it is second, it is third or fourth, or even when it comes to the essay topics. So over here, these are the questions that you can consider. What should India's push for in climate finance negotiations? All right, how can India balance development needs with the climate commitments, as well as what will you as citizen or aspirant watch in COP30 outcome? So these are the questions that you have to ponder upon when it comes to COP30, and your role is to stay informed, critically analyze the outcomes that are there, and also connect different climate actions to the governance and policies, because the climate diplomacy will change or it will shape India's future. All right, so that would be all in today's session. Thank you very much, guys, and we will meet again in another topic of discussion tomorrow. So till then, take care of yourself. Bye-bye. Take care. Jai Hind. And please do not forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel. Thank you. Bye-bye. Jai Hind.